Should we get this started, I guess? Okay, all right. Thank you all for coming very much to this YouTube panel about the art of investigative reporting on YouTube. My name's Steve Talbot, and I'm the senior producer for video at the Center for Investigative Reporting. I'm an old-time documentary filmmaker, mainly for shows like Frontline and other things on PBS. And we have an all-star cast up here from CIR and Priscilla Lau from YouTube. So I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves, a little selfie to get this started, and then we will give you a scintillating panel.
Hi everybody, my name is Priscilla Lau. I'm on the YouTube Content Partnerships, specifically on the news team, and we work with a variety of news organizations, including traditional media companies, digital natives that basically have started their business on YouTube, as well as, of course, our friends at CIR. Prior to this, I was on the Google sales team, working with advertisers on various ad campaigns, including Intel, Visa, etc.
My name is Bob Saladay. I'm managing editor of CIR. I've been at CIR for about 4.5 years. Previously, a longtime print reporter with the San Francisco Chronicle, the Los Angeles Times, and now manage a team of national security, education reporters and crime and punishment reporters, doing content on a variety of platforms from video to radio to print.
Hey everybody, my name is Ariane Wu, and I'm a multimedia producer for CIR. That means I produce short films, mainly for online, and that's anything ranging from animations to traditional documentaries to, to anything you can imagine. That's 2 to 15 minutes long that we can put online. So, thank you for coming.
Hi, I'm Michael Schiller. I'm the senior multimedia producer for the Center for Investigative Reporting. And I want to thank YouTube for having us, and it's really exciting to be here. The first time I came to Sundance was in the year 2000, before YouTube.
And now we all just live in the YouTube world. Right? Yeah. Okay, so we are going to show you a bunch of things, and we're going to talk for a little bit, and then we're going to take your questions. Let me just start by saying one of the things that CIR decided to do a year and a half, 2 years ago, was to start a YouTube channel. And we call it the I-Files, as in investigative, with a nod to the X-Files. And the I-Files, the idea is that we would put up CIR videos that we had made, animations, multimedia, but we would also curate videos from our media partners. And we've got a range of media partners, from Al Jazeera to the New York Times to 60 Minutes to a lot of independent filmmakers. And YouTube was very encouraging to us in doing this. It was going to be the first investigative news channel on YouTube, so an experiment. We got funding from the Knight Foundation to run this, and it's been a pretty successful experiment this past year and a half. We've put up over 100 videos from CIR. We've put up about 500 videos that other people have made. Just counting the videos that we've put up, we're almost at 5 million views, which for us at CIR, nonprofit, was a big deal. So it's been very effective for us. We've also helped build the visibility of a lot of independent filmmakers' films, where we will take excerpts of a film, of a documentary, and run 5 or 6 minutes, and it gets a lot of traffic, and it gets a little more, it showcases that documentary. So we encourage independent filmmakers and others who are working in the news field to come to us and to show us their videos. We like doing that. Let me just start with a very short promo that we use to try to differentiate ourselves on YouTube. This is narrated by the actor Peter Coyote, who's a friend and supporter of CIR.
YouTube is probably not the first thing that comes to mind when you think about where to look for investigative reporting. But things are changing. There's a new channel on YouTube called The I-Files, devoted entirely to the best investigative news videos from around the world. It's run by the Center for Investigative Reporting, an independent, nonprofit outfit dedicated to the highest standards of the profession. This isn't about ideology or truthiness. These are stories you can trust. Stories that make you think. Subscribe to the iFiles. Dig deep.
So thank you. that did very well for us and helped explain what the hell we are, since this is an experiment. And let me turn this right over now as we pass down to Priscilla to talk a little about, as I say, YouTube was incredibly helpful in encouraging us to do this. And looking at this, again, as an experiment, one of the things we found, to our delight, was that the retention rate has been pretty high on the channel. So we're averaging 4 and 5 minutes overall for all the videos. And for some of the most popular videos, we're running 8, 9, 10 minutes as the average length of time that someone's watching something. And some people, up to a third of the audiences, are watching half-hour documentaries all the way through. So we're very pleased with that.
Yeah, I think CIR has done a fantastic job of implementing a lot of the best practices that we asked them to, which is, experimenting with new formats. They've done a great job with telling stories, difficult stories, like in Jennifer's room, through the lens of animation. They, created a channel ad to engage with their fans, and they asked people to subscribe. They've just been a fantastic partner with us and have been extremely great to work with.
Bob, why don't you tell us a little about CIR, why YouTube got involved with us, of all organizations?
Right. Well, CIR has been around for 4 decades. It was started in the wake of Watergate, when a lot of young reporters decided to get into investigative reporting. And it cruised along quite successfully for quite a while, doing long documentaries and working a lot with Frontline. And over the past 5 years has seen an explosive growth in the amount of content we're producing and just employees. We have about 75 employees now, 45 reporters and data analysts working on a variety of beats on every platform imaginable. We do animation. We did a story about seismic safety in schools, so we did a coloring book. We do video. We have a radio show that we're starting. We work with print partners around California and produce content in a collaborative manner with all of those. So there's a lot of moving parts. A lot of our job is managing partners and their expectations and editing with them and so forth. And we do a lot of video. And YouTube was the perfect platform for us. I would say it's the most successful thing that CIR has done so far in terms of viewership and our branding and just getting our message out there and promoting investigative reporting. And it's a natural fit for us because we do like to sell our content. We're mostly funded by other foundations, other nonprofits, rich people around the world who care about investigative reporting. There's one family in San Francisco that sends us $1 million check every year and doesn't ask for anything. But we do like to sell our product once in a while, but we are open. We give, and YouTube is the perfect platform to spread our message to the world at no cost.
And Ariane, among many of you probably know this, but this year we won an Emmy for one of our deeply reported pieces, and it was an animation. So it was won in the new media category, new forms of storytelling. So it's something that appealed to our audience on YouTube, but actually got recognized by the old standard national Emmy people. And you're doing a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I've been at CIR for about 3 years now, and I've seen our video strategy evolve quite a bit throughout, the time I've been here and been there. And we definitely use online as a way to distribute our content more than ever before. And, I like it because of how flexible it is. So it frees us up to make content that is very diverse, both in style and subject matter. So anything ranging from Afghan women prisoners to an animation about how one of our marijuana reporters got accidentally high on the job, to, you know, historical documentaries. You know, it's very nice for us to be able to have that kind of flexibility, because when you're working with a broadcast partner, sometimes your movie doesn't fit into that specific time duration that they're asking for, or that specific topic that they're also asking for. So that's why I feel like online has really upped our viewership quite a bit.
Why don't you preview? We'll show something.
Sure. So here's just a clip of one type of video short film that we do, and it's I don't know. Why don't we just watch it? You want to watch it? Yeah.
Stockton is located on a navigable river, a key city in the Central Valley for marketing and distributing fresh vegetables and fruit.
Stockton, California, so broke, even Lindsay Lohan refuses to shoplift there.
There are about 70 or so documented gangs in Stockton.
We've had the highest foreclosure rate in the nation.
Downtown was the heart of Stockton.
Do you think it'll come back?
No, never.
Didn't we get ranked like one of the worst places on earth?
Yeah, we did.
Do you feel like you'll be successful in Stockton? Oh, hell no!
I go to a school that most people know as the bad kids school.
Credit issues, suspensions and expulsions.
Guns, gangs, getting locked up, misdemeanors.
These kids don't lead Disney lives.
The abandonment of my parents only turns into not almost killing me. Poetry, a way to express myself without violence, really.
There's a whole culture of Stockton that hasn't even really been explored. I have a lot of data about Stockton.
It will cost the city $1 million a year over 30 years to pay back the $10.9 million it rated for the arena complex.
I never even knew that.
That's astonishing. What would happen if we combine poetry with investigative journalism?
Stockton, it's dangerous up in here. The murder rate is a murder rate in here. 71 deaths and still counting.
Look at facts, but try to put it in a poetic way.
You're one of 31 filed for bankruptcy. The banks have corrupted your credit. See,
most people feel that young people is naive.
I'm not as nervous as I used to be, but still, getting up in front of just my class, it makes my adrenaline rush.
Do you know why and how they passed away?
They drowned in the Levee River. This isn't fun. You gotta read, you gotta write. There's critical thinking.
Not all of them can show up to the workshop. One of the students got incarcerated.
This art form, while it is open, everybody can't walk through that door.
Poetry's made me a completely different person.
I'm gonna go to college.
Just give a more realistic story as to what's happening with Stockton. Ain't nobody gonna tell their stories but them.
Your 2013 Stockton National Slam Team.
Cool.
So just to give a little background on what you guys saw, it's actually a documentary I'm working on right now, soon to be finished, very, very soon. And it's kind of an example of the kind of work that CIR does, which ranges from partnering with youth poetry groups like Youth Speaks to produce content. And in this case, it's a story about youth slam poetry and journalism that takes place in Stockton, California, which is one of the most, which actually was the largest city to go bankrupt before Detroit did. So that's just an example of just the wide variety of content we produce and why it's important for a platform like YouTube, why it's important to us to have that kind of avenue to showcase our work.
And Bob, just as an example, I mean, CIR did this in various forms, covered the Stockton story.
Right. I mean, this it started as a project that we were doing for the Young Turks, right? And we just spent more and more time down in Stockton. The Youth Speaks got involved. We do that with almost all of the stories. Our reporters are out there looking for great stories, and we're constantly trying to figure out which platforms they're on. One of our challenges is we have a lot of print reporters, and we're training them now to do radio, to do video, to think about animation, to think about getting their stories out on a variety of areas. It's this long tail, as you all know, we've been talking about for a long time, that people are consuming news from all over the place.
Ariane, before we get to Michael, show us one more example of what you've been up to.
Okay, so this is just an excerpt from another short doc that I did about Richard Aoki. And for those of you who don't know Richard Aoki, he was an activist back in the 60s and leader of a lot of well, I guess I could show you, but he turned out to be an FBI informant. And that was pretty shocking to everybody. And so this was something that one of the reporters uncovered while working at CIR, and we decided to turn that into kind of a historical documentary.
As you could tell, he's been working on this story for a long time.
Provocative opening. He actually looks exactly the same.
This was, he wrote a book called Subversives about Berkeley in the 60s and Hoover and Reagan's sort of secret war on the student movement in Berkeley. And this was a story that came out of the book.
A former FBI agent had heard that I was doing research, and he contacted me. His name was Bernie Threadgill. And he says, "Hey, I know that guy." And he said, "Aoki was my informant. I developed him."
Oh yeah, he was a character. He said, "I don't have any interest in communism." And I said, "Well, why don't you just go to some of the meetings and tell me who's there and what they talked about." So one thing led to another, and he became a real good informant.
Well, I had never heard of Richard Aoki before Bernie Threadgill told me about him. So I started to research who was Richard Aoki. Aoki was a prominent activist in the San Francisco Bay Area during the 60s.
Definitely Richard was someone who looked at things politically. The impression I got was basically, if you become his friend, he's like your friend for life, And he was like that with most people,
He had been very involved in the Third World Liberation Front strike at Berkeley in 1969. He was one of the most militant leaders of that strike. Aoki had also been involved in a group called the Asian American Political Alliance, one of the first Asian activist groups in the country. He'd also had a connection with the Black Panthers. Aoki was head of the Berkeley chapter of the Panthers and later became a field marshal in the Panthers. And it was known that he had given the Black Panthers guns. I knew from my research that he was a very smart and complex person. He had a fascinating history. His family was interned during World War II. He'd grown up in West Oakland in a very rough neighborhood, predominantly black and impoverished neighborhood. He was part of a gang. He was involved in a lot of petty crimes, co-valedictorian in his junior high school. When he was in the Army, he became a firearms expert. So I was really curious to know about this other side of his life. I'm wondering if you remember a guy named Bernie Threadgill?
Bernie Threadgill?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
What I was told in my research that during this period of time you actually worked for the FBI.
They tell you that?
Bernie told me that.
He did?
He did.
Oh, that's interesting.
Informants were used when I was in the FBI. An informant would report on the inner workings of an organization. They can keep you up to date on the thinking of the leadership of the organization, whether it's going this way, that way. Someone like Aoki is perfect to be in a Black Panther Party, because I understand he's Japanese. Hey, nobody's going to guess. He's in the Black Panther Party. Nobody's going to guess that he might be an informant.
So that stirred up quite a controversy when it came out in the Bay Area, because he, you know, to a lot of people was sort of a beloved guy. I mean, Bobby Seale in his biography, you know, autobiography, had said, "We got our first guns from Aoki." But it was obviously kind of a shock to find out that he had been an FBI informant for years.
And Seth has had a long association with CIR, and he's a longtime reporter for the San Francisco Examiner as well. He came to us with this story as part of his book, and we worked with him to produce this film and to produce a print story that came out in conjunction with this book. So the story sort of came to us ready-made. We like that. We do work occasionally with freelancers who come to us with great story ideas and sort of massage what they're doing.
Can I just say something? So one of the things that I really love about YouTube, and not just because I work here, is that there's something for everybody here. So whether it's, you know, children, you know, working on poetry and building themselves in high school, or exposing undercover reporting, you know, YouTube is the second largest search engine, and we reach over 61 countries, and we're localized. And so I think that's part of the reason why this platform is a great place for creators to really build their content.
And one of our better creators is Michael Schiller, who's going to now tell you about some of the work that he's been working on and show you a couple of examples.
Yes, so I'm relatively new to the Center for Investigative Reporting. It's been about 6 months, and it's been this amazing experience for me. It's a dream job. I feel very fortunate to be part of this organization. I love that it's nonprofit, so you know, it's really about telling stories. It's really about getting at the truth. It's not motivated by getting paid. It's really motivated by getting at the truth, and that's, you know, that's a rare thing in this day and age. I also love the openness to creativity. I'm a longtime fan of animation. I've been working on animation and from an independent perspective for many, many years, and I grew up around a lot of underground comics and was very inspired by the underground comics movement. And so what I saw in CIR was this amazing blend of real journalism chops and real investigative journalism and this beautiful experimentation. And it's a very exciting opportunity. And so one of the projects that I've been working on for quite a while is creating an animation based on the reporting of Trey Bundy and Daffodil Atlan that Bob Saladay's been editing. And this is a story about juveniles in solitary confinement. And this is a phenomenon. This is something that happens right here in this country. It's much more common than you would ever expect. And part of the challenge of telling this story is that this one particular place we're looking at is essentially a dark site. They won't allow any media in. So we talk a lot about when we're going to do an animation. What's the motivation for doing an animation? It can't just be that drawings are cool and we like drawings. There has to be some real motivation. And part of the motivation for this story is that you can't get inside. So based on eyewitness testimony, working with people who have been juveniles who have been in solitary confinement for extended periods of time, we created this animated space. So what I'm going to show you now is actually a sneak preview. This is not yet published, so this is the only place you're going to see it, right here at the YouTube venue at Sundance. And this also is a companion piece to our radio program. We have a radio program called Reveal, revealradio.org. And this is a relatively new project. It was one of my first projects when I signed up, was producing a few pieces. It airs in over 140 markets nationwide, all the top markets for public radio. And every story that we do for Reveal Radio, there's a companion piece that's a multimedia piece, whether that's photographs, animation, or what have you. So we're about to come out with a new story and a new radio, the second of our radio pilots. And this is going to go as a companion piece. And if I can just ask you to turn it up a little bit. This is not yet fully mixed and mastered.
Being in the box as a teenager, it took a toll on me mentally. Why would you want to put a kid through this?
So the animator, Zach Meadow, is here in the audience. Let's have a round of applause for the animator. So this is going to be coming out in March 1st. This will publish along with the Reveal radio program. And the other thing that I wanted to share here today is a piece that's also not yet public. So I don't mean to be cagey, but there's certain details about our investigations that are not yet public. This is a project that's being done. It's an environmental story that's being done in conjunction with The Guardian and is going to publish. I can't give you any more details than that. But I hope you enjoy the animation. And I'll tell you this, that environmental stories are tough. They're tough to make interesting and engaging. So, and you know, one of the things I love about CIR is that there's a sense of humor. As serious and as intense as a lot of these stories are, there's a sense of humor. So with this story, we said, it's an environmental pollution story, and we said, why not make the pollution an actual character? So this is the adventures of Toxic Joe, who's a piece of toxic waste.
It was a hot, hot fire, nearly 2,000 degrees. When we cooled off, a bunch of nasty new toxins called dioxins came out and scared the heck out of everybody. It was awful. Dioxins are part of the dirty dozen of dangerous chemicals that can get into the food chain and cause all sorts of reproductive and developmental problems.
So just a short sampling there. And I guess the other thing that I wanted to take this opportunity to do was to make an industry announcement. We're going to be starting a new series of films in 2014, launching in the next few months, of CIR originals. And traditionally, we've worked with partners to get our content out there into the world. And you know, one of the places, one of the only places that we've done original content direct to the audience is with YouTube. And so we're going to take advantage of the iFiles and this YouTube relationship to publish this new series of short films called CIR Originals. And so stay tuned for those. Those will be coming out in the next few months.
Yeah. So that'll be March 1st is what we're aiming for on that.
We're seeing more and more animation. I can tell you one of the challenges we faced with the traditional big media journalists, we've hired a lot of reporters from newspapers, is getting over this hurdle of animating their stories. But there was an apprehension about making it look too cartoonish, maybe dumbing down the story. We found that sort of is now totally washed away, that every journalist that we work with wants to animate their stories. They're really into it. There's been a complete shift in the sort of ground level journalism culture about animation and telling stories that way. You can do it in a compelling, thoughtful manner. You can do it in an entertaining way and really grab people. We find it's some of the most popular stuff that we put up online. So culturally, reporters now have sort of caught up with that, and they're completely into it. It's a good sign.
One thing I wanted to mention after, yeah. So the other thing that we're working on now and trying to reach new audiences is working with musicians and recording artists that may never have traditionally worked with investigative reporting. But for example, I forgot to mention, the environmental story has an original score by the Steep Canyon Rangers, Grammy Award-winning group, who's Steve Martin's band. They scored this cartoon, and so that's a really exciting new development. We're hoping to do more of that in the next 12 months.
Can I just add just one thing for the filmmakers and the audience is that, you're filmmakers, but to not discount working for like a newsroom, because the demand for really high quality, creative, visual work is higher than ever before. And I can tell you from experience that working in an environment where there's interesting stories coming down the pipeline every day from the reporters working around you, that's really exciting. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
And I just wanted to mention that I know that we're all very familiar with the dogs and cat videos on YouTube, but we're actually seeing a trend in long form content doing really well on our platform. And so what we've seen is that when people make great content in whatever form, and YouTube is an open canvas for you with various features and tool sets and analytics, like Steve mentioned, audience retention, like seeing how much people are watching of your video. So I just want to encourage you guys to think about that. YouTube is not just short form videos, but also a place for long form documentaries and deep stories.
Yeah, it's really true. So we've got 2 more things we can show you, but maybe some questions. If any of you have any now, we can jump in or we can show you these things. So if anyone's dying to ask anything, please do it now, or yeah.
Right. Well, it's called snitch jacketing, snitch jacketing, which was we got accused of doing through the FBI after that story came out. But the evidence in 15 years of FOIA requests by Seth Rosenfeld, the thousands and thousands of pages of documents were so conclusive that there was no question that Aoki was an informant for the FBI. It was, but that's a very good question because it was a good lesson for CIR. Those documents we released after the initial story came out, and the initial story was based on this interview with Bernie Threadgill. The second part of his FOIA request literally came in the mail. It sounds outrageous, but literally came in the mail the day the story ran in newspapers, and those new documents confirmed conclusively that he was an informant. So we felt we had more than enough multiple sources. There were already documents, but then it just sort of so the timing was a bit off on that. We probably could have waited, but we were confident.
And there were documents before that he had
there were documents
that cross-reference this. So there are always multiple sources in a CIR story.
The lesson also is that if you have the document, well, we did this, but now you have to put the documents online with the story. You can't just tell people things anymore. All of it has to go up. All of your source documents go up. We put it all up on Document Cloud, everything. They can see everything because people are so skeptical now about the media. Rightly so.
Yes. So let's just show, we're going to show 2 more things. This is a serious piece. We're just going to show you the beginning. It's a classic documentary. It's very investigative. It's a woman, I shouldn't say where she's from, but she's not from the United States, and she went to Afghanistan and reported about women who are locked up for so-called moral crimes, which mainly means running away from arranged marriages. And she interviewed people in prisons and in safe houses. And this just give you the setup to this story. So this is another kind of thing that we're constantly doing.
I'm a photojournalist from Iran. I came to Afghanistan in 2001 with one of the first groups of journalists permitted after the fall of the Taliban. At the time, everyone was hopeful that life would improve for women here, but very little has changed. In fact, many fear that women's rights are in danger of disappearing in Afghanistan. Young women are sent to prison simply for falling in love with the wrong man. Some risk their lives for love. I met such a woman. This is her story, and in some ways, the story for all women in Afghanistan.
So that's the only narrated part of the film. It's a short, it's about a half an hour. It's being submitted to film festivals now. So this will be a CIR original in film festivals, and we'll also put on the iFiles. What's amazing about this film is that how intimate it is, because she actually gets into these prisons and interviews people, and you get these incredible stories where the line "to kill a sparrow" comes from the fact that the brother and father of one of these women who's run away from an arranged marriage to an elderly man, she wants to be with the husband of her child and so forth, and they say, if she does this and we find her, we're going to kill her. It means nothing to us. It's the same as killing a sparrow. So it's a very heavy, important film. We're pleased to be supporting. And now for something, the last thing to show that's totally different, to show we have a sense of humor, and to follow up on Bob's comment that this is a case of a reporter kind of opening himself up and saying, we try to be transparent about our mistakes too, and he had an inadvertent marijuana experience. So this is that film.
I just didn't think twice about the food, even though she had told us that there were food samples prepared with really high-powered marijuana, high THC marijuana. It's probably fair to say that over the last few years, I've become a pot reporter. In 2010, the marijuana marketplace was sort of exploding in California. You had people coming out of the shadows who had been growing or selling for years illegal, and all of a sudden they had websites, they were operating publicly. All of a sudden, this kind of seemed like a mainstream industry. At the same time, we were talking to confidential informants, trying to dig in on the dark side of the trade, talking to Mexicans who might have links to drug gangs across the border. You saw this sort of secretive world emerging, and you could shine a little bit of light on it. In Los Angeles, we came across a woman who had been an illegal pot dealer, but who's now really trying to be a businesswoman. She let us follow her as she was doing her thing, running a medical marijuana delivery service. She's very well organized, carries a small suitcase with her samples in it. She delivered to a teacher who was on lunch break in the back of a Starbucks parking lot. She went to a production company where she delivered to a film editor there. The sort of climax to our visit was these Sunday brunches she would have at her house in West LA. Men and women came with their kids in strollers, a lot of young professional types. There was music, football game on TV, food and desserts, and then in a rear cottage, there were bongs and joints and all sorts of samples. In her house, she would have a doctor who was available for consultation in a sort of side home office. People would come in, fill out their medical marijuana forms, spend a few minutes with the doctor, and they would get their recommendations. The woman would offer to supply these people with their now medical marijuana. It was all one-stop shopping. It was a brunch with pot. She had said that some of the desserts were laced with medical marijuana and some weren't, and I didn't really pay close attention to that. I was busy capturing this remarkable scene, so I ate the brownies. I was in a little bit of a hurry, had to catch my flight back to San Francisco. So I grabbed my gear, hopped in a cab, went straight to the airport, check-in and all that. And when I got to the terminal, you know, LAX is a rather large airport, I started getting this dreamlike feeling that I wasn't in the present universe. And I knew immediately that something had gone wrong. And it hits me. I am like totally stoned. I'm not going to get really stoned. This is just going to, and then I thought, oh my God, it's hitting me. And I'm going further and further and further into this other world. And then I started feeling these extreme sensations of anxiety. I wanted to get on my flight. I wanted to get back to San Francisco. So I tried to control my feelings. And I actually got into the airplane. The blinking lights, the white paint, the electronica music. I had never flown Virgin American before this trip. There was no one sitting on either side of me, and I kept looking out the window thinking, well, if I can just keep looking out the window, I'll be okay. And then I thought, but what if I'm not okay? What if I freak out mid-flight? And, you know, they have to alert Homeland Security. And think of the headlines, pot reporter overdoses on his own medicine or something like that. I got to get out of this plane. I said I was not feeling well. Got back into the terminal and found an obscure spot and really literally crumpled up into a ball and tried to sleep, but it was just coming at me, the high. So I just didn't know if I was going to come back from this place. Finally, I called my wife, and she told me to just stay where I was until I felt better. I was probably there for about 4 hours before I could even think about booking another flight. It was only after that, some days later, that I was talking to some people I know who are in the medical marijuana business, and they said, look, for our patients who use pot all the time, we tell them to take half a brownie or a quarter of a brownie and wait 2 hours and see what happens. I had eaten 2 marijuana brownies, high potency pot brownies. So I think, you know, in a funny way, that this experience got me to think a little bit harder about pot. If I were a 16-year-old kid and ate 2 of these brownies, where would it lead me if I were driving a vehicle? Things like that. Medical marijuana supporters say it should be, you know, closely regulated. Right now, it's not. The pot today, I feel, is very different from the pot, you know, 20 or 30 years ago when I was a kid. So this was 2 years ago. I've gone on to continue to cover the pot world, but I have to say, every time I smell a joint, I smell pot, you know, which is lots of places in the Bay Area, I sort of still have that slight little pulse of panic from that day. It's weird, and it's like, oh God, you know, give me my martini.
So that's a range of what we do. We're happy to talk to you informally as we continue to drink here, unless anyone has some pot brownies. But we're also happy to answer any last questions you might have as a group. Anybody?
Yes, well, you know, we offer a variety of services. One of them might be just simply coordinating production, editing of a piece that's, you know, coming in for a landing. We're working with a young filmmaker now as an education-related documentary he's been working on. It's very powerful, and so we're trying to get financing for him, and maybe we can help him edit that. But if someone comes in early, we're always looking for great ideas. We get pitches all the time. We do have a limited staff, and they're all working on big projects. But but we'll shift and pivot, and literally assign someone to work with that person. It's a lot of meetings. It's a lot of phone calls. They can camp out at CIR for editing and reporting. We do a lot of joint trips. If we're working with CNN, which we've done, we fly to, you know, they're interested in totally in the visuals. And the scene. We help them with reporting. We do background briefings with them. Then we fly to LA or fly to Texas if it's a border story and shoot with them. Sometimes we're also bringing a microphone for our radio show. So it depends on the collaboration. It depends on the story, and we can pivot and make decisions as we go.
But if someone walks in the door with a terrific story, we're going to listen.
Yeah.
And we're going to vet it, and we're going to figure out what the best way to present it is. So I want to thank again YouTube, because this would, you know, not be possible without them. So we're very grateful to have the channel, and we're going to continue to experiment on it, and CIR Originals will start appearing in the spring, and there'll be a lot more coming at you. So we hope you watch and let us know what you think.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot.